Where else would you rather be? I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association. Welcome to the people of Penn State. Each week on the podcast, you can expect to hear the voices of Penn Staters talking about what they're passionate about, and you can expect to feel the pride and the power of the Penn State Network. The People of Penn State podcast can be found on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Go ahead and subscribe, give us a rating. Ratings and reviews are the best way to help others find these great stories. And we have yet another great story to pass on to you today. Shadé Olasimbo is an Emmy-nominated video producer, editor, and videographer based in Atlanta, where she runs FCOlasimbo Productions. From athletes, administrators, and academics on Capitol Hill, construction site, and in the C-suite, she's worked in every type of production in almost every conceivable role. Currently, Shadé is the senior video producer at HubSpot, where she's the lead producer behind the newly launched Hustle YouTube channel. She graduated from Penn State with a degree in broadcast journalism in 2012 and earned a Master of Education from the University of Miami in 2019. But no matter what she's doing, Shadé is always looking for ways to combine her love of production with her passion for helping others by sharing their stories with the world. And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to turn the tables on Shadé and share her story with the world. Please welcome Shadé Olasimbo to the People of Penn State podcast.
Hi, Paul. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. We were just together in Atlanta, enjoying breakfast together. I skipped breakfast this morning, so I'm a little peckish. Wish we were there. Wish we were back there, enjoying this conversation over a meal. But so excited to have you and share your story with fellow Penn Staters.
Thank you. Yeah, it is weird being on this side of things. I'm normally behind the camera or behind the scenes or running the production. So it's nice to kind of have an opportunity to be in front of and tell my own story. So
that's right. If you want to give production notes and direction, we are open. We're here for that. So.
You guys are doing a great job. I watched a few of these. They sound great. They look great. No notes so far.
Excellent. Well, let's start right at the very beginning. How did you become a Penn State Nittany Lion?
Oh, that is a lovely story. So I'm born and raised in Houston, Texas, and I knew I wanted to go far from home for school. Penn State was actually the only out-of-state school that I applied to. And I got a note when I was accepted. I got a note about Achievers Weekend. So that's a weekend where diverse students are offered a weekend to stay on campus with other students. And so I got this letter and I'm like, Mom, I really, really, really want to go. Obviously, I'm not from anywhere nearby that's driving distance. So of course that requires a flight. My mom's like, I'm not sending my only child to Penn State by herself on a plane. So she calls the admissions office and she ends up talking to one Gary Abdullah, who was working there at the time, that's now in the College of Communications as a Dean of Diversity and Inclusion. But she practically curses him out. He loves to tell this story, but he's one of the reasons why I'm at Penn State, simply because he was able to talk her off a ledge and kind of give her the opportunity to say, like, no, I will promise you, I will take care of your child. She's not going in the middle of nowhere. She will be safe. She will be taken care of. And so I went. I absolutely had a fantastic weekend. I was exposed to a lot of amazing students, a lot of student leaders, a lot of opportunities. And I remember like getting up on that Sunday morning before a lot of people were up, and I walked around campus and I just knew that like that was going to be my home. And so that was it. There was no other choice for me. I was going to Penn State. And then a couple months later, I was on campus my freshman year, and it just all happened from there. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up at Penn State. But I also did know I wanted to major in broadcast journalism. So that also did help that I was ready and rearing to go.
So one of the things that I talk about with my daughters as they approach their college experience is to think of it as like a soaking wet towel, right? And,
yes.
And by the end of it, you want it to be completely dry because you've wrung every little drop out of that experience out of the towel. And that seems like a good analogy to describe your time here at Penn State. You were involved in PSN TV, The Lion, No Refund Theater. You were an RA. You were on Homecoming Court. And you also took classes and prepared for your career. Talk about some of the experiences that you were involved in as a student at Penn State outside of the classroom.
Yeah, I think one of the things I wanted to do when I came was that, especially being far away from home, is how do you make an opportunity feel like it's worth it, right? Or that you're doing the best out of things. So one of the things that I wanted to do when I first came to campus, it's actually funny. My mom was like, okay, make sure you take your time, get acclimated, things of that nature. And I was like, yeah, mom, sure. And then my freshman year, I was on, I had a show on The Lion. I was actually producing a show on PSN TV. And I was like, yeah, so remember that time I was supposed to be taking it slow? Didn't do that from the first get. But I think one of the opportunities that I had was just kind of soaking up all of what Penn State had to offer, because there is so much. I don't remember where I heard this, but I know that one of my former professors, Malcolm Moran, still quotes me in saying this, but it is not mine, but I still use it. But you can always make a big school small, but you can't make a small school big. And so one of my also goals was to tap into the resources of a large community like a Penn State, but take it and make it as small as I possibly could by joining organizations, by making friends, by kind of taking advantage of the resources that are available and kind of making my own little communities and my own little families out of things. And so that was one of the things that I really tried to soak up. So in some of my trying to develop myself in knowing coming in and knowing I wanted to do journalism and wanting to do production, starting off with, all right, let's dabble in radio. Let's dabble in TV a bit. Let's kind of get these different avenues. Starting there with some of those clubs, because you don't always get those opportunities as a freshman, because those core classes come later. And then also, again, some of my personal interests, which were theater. So getting involved in thespians, getting involved in no refund theater, and having that opportunity to, be on a stage or be involved with other people who were like me and create kind of those communities, which were really important. And again, continuing that and finding opportunities to, either be a leader or a mentor, like being an RA, which I absolutely loved when I was a student. And again, doesn't help that you get free room and board. But I did enjoy that experience and kind of that bonding and being that person that was also involved. I was also in SMART. So I was a tour guide with SMART. So then getting that knowledge of, Penn State and the little things that you learn about quirky little facts about different buildings on campus, things that I can still quote randomly. And I'm like, oh, did you know that East Hall is the largest residence hall area in the country? So it's nice to be able to kind of spit those random facts about Penn State or about my experience based off of just kind of how I existed in the university community.
That's amazing. The Malcolm Moran quote reminds me of one that I use all the time, is that nothing prepares you for Penn State, but Penn State prepares you for everything, right?
Yep.
There's nothing to quite prepare you for the size and scope of an institution like this. And yet, once you find your way, you can really navigate any other organization that you're going to be involved in for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So you had an interesting, if I'm remembering this right, you had an interesting experience when you were a tour guide with SMART.
I did. It's, again, first of all, for those who know me or knew me or still know me, I am quite loud. So one of the things I would always start my tours with was that, if anyone recognizes me and sees me walking backwards and will yell the "We Are" chant, please know that I'm expecting you to now represent me and know that you need to scream that very loud and proud. So that was one of the first things I would always introduce folks with on a tour was don't embarrass me. I need you to also be good at this chant. But as I was a tour guide, again, teaching people about Penn State, I remember, I don't remember this tour specifically, but I was moving in as an RA, one of my residents, and I get a knock on my door and I was like, she's like, I recognize you. And I realized this is the reason why I recognize you. You were my tour guide. And I was like, excuse me? I was your what? She was like, yeah, I have a picture of you giving me a tour at Penn State. She was like, I kind of made my decision, but I was really excited that I now moved in and I met you and I really enjoyed it. And here you are as my RA. And I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. So I'm glad that you enjoyed the tour and decided you were coming. But then the fact that I got to actually have her as a resident. Her name's Alexis. We're still friends. But yeah, it's actually really cool that I got to see the fruits of my labor. The walking backwards meant something, and I got to actually see that come to fruition. So that's somewhere like living in the depths of like Facebook, but pulled it off a digital camera, like, going back a little bit. It wasn't a phone photo. It was a digital camera photo, SD card to like upload type stuff. So.
That's amazing. When you came to Penn State, you jumped in with 2 feet, right? All immersed as you've just described. What did you come to study, and what was your initial career goal, and how did that shift during your time?
Yeah, that's a good question. I came to I knew I wanted to do journalism. I think I used to start like cover letters with this, that like my mom has a photo of me like reading the morning announcements when I was like in elementary school. There was a period of time where like I was dead set on being in front of the camera, like news anchor, 10 o'clock news comes on and here's Shadé's face, right? And then as I started coming to as I came to Penn State, and I started taking classes, and I started learning about all the different avenues in production, I just really started to develop a love of being behind the camera, being behind the scenes, also kind of just being the one in charge and telling people what to do, to be completely and totally honest. But I think having the exposure to a lot of different opportunities. So one of the benefits of going into like my later, career at Penn State in my junior and senior year, kind of taking those later exposure classes. So I did have a radio reporting class. And I was like, okay, I really like radio. I was doing the show. Maybe this is a career. I interned at B94.5 back when PJ Mullen was the head of the show. And I was like, okay, cool. I could do radio. I have a love of sports. I actually interned at the NBA for a summer, and I was like, all right, I could do the like sports thing. I was in the John Curley Center for Sports Journalism. It's like, that could be like an avenue for me too. I did CCR, which is Center County Report, which is the live newscast that students produce once a week, I believe twice a week now, because that's how amazing the program has grown. And I was like, all right, yeah, I could maybe go this news route too. But I was kind of trying all of these different things, and I had the opportunity to be exposed to so many different things that it kind of came to this opportunity where like, well, maybe I'd try a couple different things. And then I ended up ultimately starting to edit some content in the back end. This is kind of going into like my career, but after I graduated, I was like sending out resume reels and, tapes and things of that nature, kind of figuring out where I wanted to be. And I had a different resume for each kind of avenue. I had my sports resume tailored. I had my news resume tailored. And then I had my like production resume tailored. And I was like, all right, I kind of don't know where I want to go, but I am staying in State College, trying to figure it all out. And I reached out to one of my former professors, Topher Yorks. And I was like, hey, so know of anything? Need some help with something? And he was like, yeah, actually, do you want to cut some content for LadyLions.com? And I'm like, all right, sure. So I started editing some sports content for him. And then all of a sudden it was just like, he's like, all right, so do you like kind of want to keep doing this? And he's like, I have an opportunity coming up. And I'm like, yes, I need a job. So I will absolutely keep doing this. And so that's how I actually ended up in my first role, which ended up starting my career in sports. So.
That's amazing. This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. I'm joined by Shadé Olasimbo. She is the senior producer at HubSpot. So take us through like a brief run through of your career. You got that first opportunity, right? And where did that lead you?
So first opportunity was at WPSU Penn State. So I didn't go far away from my home of sweet old State College. So I spent my first 3 years of my career there working with the football and men's basketball TV shows as a producer and editor. Absolutely loved my time there. WPSU is still a very big home to me, and still very much so like a place that I stop whenever I'm in State College. And then I moved to the University of Miami, where I was a manager of production services. So basically I worked with all of the different teams at Miami in the athletic department. I was lead videographer for men's basketball. I worked with football, swim and dive, track and field were kind of my main ones, but I literally worked with everyone, and it was super fantastic. Just kind of experiencing another university, another style of athletics and things of that nature. And that's kind of where I picked up shooting and how I learned how to shoot like actually every day. And then I made the move to the DC area where I worked at the National Association of Manufacturers, where I kind of led the charge in terms of all video production there. And then COVID hit. I actually left that job. And then I started my LLC and started freelancing on my own. Then I picked up a gig at a company called the Neuro Leadership Institute, which uses science to make organizations more human. So working with, trying to remove the bias from hiring or what happens to the brain when you're interviewing or working on feedback. And then I left there. And then that's how I ended up at HubSpot. I currently work on The Hustle, which is a subsidiary of HubSpot, but is kind of like a news brand that focuses on business and tech, and recently launched in October the Hustle YouTube channel, which focuses a lot on those stories. So we do animated explainers, we do content that breaks down economics, we're doing field stories and shoots. So it's been really exciting to kind of build from the ground up and kind of take what used to be a thing that I did that was strictly all production, and then social media and venue content, then was like field production and like strictly things that were only seen by trainings, to now things that are strictly for YouTube, which is kind of all still in the realm of production, all still in the realm of writing and production and journalism, but like truly going back to some of the journalism and like editorial writing and editorial, how do you make a fair use case for content you're trying to use, or how do you tell a story but still try to keep within the metrics and engagements of what YouTube is, or again, working for a brand where you're still trying to make sure you're like pushing content, right? So like, what's the balance between making sure you have a journalistic story that you're telling, but also that you're like getting content for? So yeah, it's actually really exciting. And I'm super happy with the way that things are going, the amazing team that we have that's building the content on the channel.
So Shadé, it's interesting when you're at the point that you're at, and you take a look back at your career, right? And describe it. It's a straight line, right? I started here and I got here, right?
Line? I think it kind of
in hindsight, right? It always appears to be like a straight line, but in reality, there were some bumps along the way. Talk about the 2020 pandemic and your intentional decision to leave a couple of those opportunities, and kind of talk through what the reasons were and the conflict with your values.
Yeah. So one of the things that I truly learned about myself through the pandemic and through, my growth in my career as a person is just that, like, there's a lot of things that you learn about yourself. And I think 2020 taught a lot of people a lot of different things. They taught, resiliency. It taught us how to figure out to solve problems and things of that nature. And so the job that I left pre-pandemic, I think my last day was March 6th. I left it on my own. I had a couple interviews lined up at a couple different companies. I had a little bit of savings. I was like, all right, I could do a couple months if, these few interviews don't work out. And, of course, March 6th is when I left. The world shut down the following week. On top of that, I ended up having a bad breakup. I ended up having gallbladder removal. Like, it was a lot of different things I was dealing with at once. So like that first March, April was not the prettiest for me. So I was just trying to figure out, what is it that I'm going to do now that I have no plans? The entire world is shut down and I have no clue where I'm going or what I'm doing. And what do you do when you're faced with that, right? What do you do when you have no plan? And again, I'm a producer at heart. That's like what I named myself first, is producer, editor, videographer, because I am a planner. I have contingency plans on contingency plans. I make lists. So the fact that I did not have a plan and I did not know where things were going every day when I woke up was like terrifying. And so I, tried to figure things out. I started, to make sure that, savings did not go great. I started working part-time at Amazon. I was babysitting and nannying for a bit. And then luckily, again, the way that I left my previous company was in a way that, I still had amazing ties. And that's something that I always rely on as not only my personality, but my work ethic that people know about me, is that like, I'm going to give everything that I have into every little opportunity that I get. So because I left on such great terms, I ended up contracting with that company. And that's what implored me to start officially freelancing and making my full-time LLC. And, again, starting at a new company where, again, I kind of was faced with the decision where, am I where I want to be in my career? Am I happy here? Do I want to stay? And can I make things work? And again, I was faced with a decision where I don't want to do this anymore. And I did it before. I did it in 2020 when there was literally no end in sight. So like I can do it again and I can figure things out and I made a business out of it, right? I've done a lot of things of my own. So like now once you've done it once, you can do it pretty much anytime. So now
Right.
I'm not saying I'm made of steel or anything like that, but like I definitely have learned a lot about myself in that very sense that like I can literally do anything. And I think that one of the things that people say is, you've made it through 100% of the days, right? That you've 100% of your bad days. So right. Yeah, I've made it through 100% of my bad days. Like today I was blessed enough to wake up and be here with you, right? So any day's a good day if you're above ground. So yeah, that's kind of the way I look at it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, now your current role, you're the senior producer at HubSpot. You're launching and managing a YouTube channel. For those of us who don't know what's involved, first of all, what is HubSpot? And then what's involved in launching and creating a YouTube channel?
Good question. A lot of people do ask, what is HubSpot? HubSpot is a CRM, so it's a customer resource manager. So like if you are a company, especially we cater to a lot of like small businesses and medium-sized companies. If you're a company that wants to connect your sales, your customer service, your marketing, we're kind of all of those spokes all in one is what content we offer. And the cool thing about HubSpot is we're really customer focused and really big on what that does first. So like if you go to HubSpot.com right now and you wanted to try how to be able to integrate your sales and marketing, a lot of the content we deliver and offer completely and totally free. So that's kind of the way that like we operate is that we'll give you a lot for free. So you realize the value in actually putting your money behind the product itself. And so that's one of the things that I love about the culture of the company itself, that like we're really big on, values and, we call the principles are like heart. And so that's really transparent a lot of what we do. And so the actual company as a whole is what I absolutely love, but I'm kind of working as I'm a HubSpot employee. I'm also working under the subsidiary that is The Hustle. So HubSpot's media entities as a whole, as a company, especially as a tech company, has invested in a lot of the brand and the media. So the HubSpot blog, which has a lot of tips and resources for people who are in business that are trying to create leads, that are trying to generate, how do you get social media clicks? What is search engine optimization and how do you utilize it? Things of that nature that we also run. There's actually a lot of YouTube channels on our purview, and we're kind of expanding that as well. Our creators network, our podcast network, like it's a lot that kind of lives within the brand of HubSpot in media. And the fact that the company invests in that and really sees the value in that is really great because one, it keeps me employed, but two, it gives an opportunity to kind of like, have that opportunity to grow and develop in different ways that like not a lot of companies see a lot of value in. And YouTube is massive, right? I mean, there's a way that we didn't think before that like we would be consuming media the way that we do now. The fact that like TV and cable used to be so important. People are ditching cable, but we're spending just as much on individual streaming services. So the fact that YouTube has kind of become this way that people will look into, it's become the same way that like, oh, I'll just Google it. Let me YouTube it. Right. So that's kind of become synonymous with what you're doing. So yeah, what it takes to actually manage a YouTube channel, a lot of planning. Luckily, The Hustle has already been a brand that a lot of people follow. It's so it started off as a daily newsletter, 2.4 million people subscribe to it. And it comes out every day, 7:30 or every weekday, 7:30. And then on Sundays, there's a more in-depth journalistic piece that's done by some amazing writers. And so we take some of that existing content, repurpose it and do fully animated videos. We have an amazing on-camera talent and script writer who does another series that we break down called Hustlenomics. And then we're working on some other additional content as well, including some shorts, including some interviews. But The Hustle as a whole has also grown because there's now a daily podcast in addition to our YouTube channel. So it's been super great to kind of see how that's all been molded and expanded. And then having, again, like the amazing, super talented people that are involved in this. Like these are some of the most talented editors and animators I've worked with in my entire career. And it's exciting that I get to kind of lead the ship in terms of, helping with the stories, looking at our content, looking at how things are being viewed, what our goals are, and kind of meeting those and then hopefully exceeding them, which we've been doing lately, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. Shadé, we touched on this a little bit, but you have lived now all over the East Coast, uh,
Mhm.
Miami, DC, and now in Atlanta. Talk about how everywhere along the way you've stayed involved with Penn State. I know you've been active with our African American Alumni Organization in particular and participate in Penn State Short Doc. Talk a little bit about how you stay connected here at Penn State.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that like Penn State is a family. I absolutely love that, like, no matter where I go, and again, early in my career, especially in sports, I traveled a lot. So if I had a free moment, I was going online, finding where the nearest alumni association was, especially if it was football season, and trying to figure out where's the watch party, where can I find people who are in blue and white that I can that I can spend time with. So in my time, especially in Miami, especially in DC, and obviously here, I've spent time with the alumni associations and finding and experiencing those chapters and finding some watch parties or other events to attend. I think even I was on a work trip a couple of years ago in Columbus, Ohio. Of course, territory of some other people, but found the Penn State Alumni Association and went to a watch party there. I've been home for the holidays and was able to watch a bowl party in Houston with the Alumni Association. So the fact that like there are chapters that exist everywhere and I could literally just go online, find them, see an event and just stroll through, say hello and be around people who have the same experience as me, ask them what their favorite creamery flavor is, where what part of campus they were at or what building they lived in when they were on campus or things like that make it makes me feel like home wherever I am in the country, literally. And then in terms of the AAAO, so the African American Alumni Organization, while I was in DC, I joined AAAO and was on the board there for a couple of years. I just finished up, even though I moved to Atlanta, I just finished up and transferred my role of social media communications chair and passed it on to someone else. And then I'm taking a small break, but will definitely be active and involved in the AAAO Atlanta chapter. And it's amazing that that's an opportunity for Black alumni to get together and have in major cities where there are a lot of Black people to kind of come together and have and share our experiences as alumni and have both, the larger alumni association, but also, again, to kind of gather and be together and share our Penn State experiences.
So, Shadé, in all of our interactions, the thing that jumps out to me is kind of the positivity that you exude and the growth mindset.
No.
And you approach everything with a growth mindset, whether it's the setbacks you've faced or the successes that you've had. We talked a little bit about in your introduction that your real passion is the impact and the actions that you're able to have on others and helping others tell their story. Talk a little bit about how you continue to do that.
Yeah, I think honestly, as a person who's experienced a lot, as a person who's had to overcome a lot, I did not have the easiest path to a lot of different things, right? Not just in my career, but like even getting into the doors at Penn State. And I think that it's important to make sure that people feel like they have a voice, that they have someone that they can hear from. As someone who has an opportunity to be behind the camera, to interview people, to then take those interviews, to be trusted what people say on camera, and then edit those together, weave a story together, and then share that is really important. And I think that anytime someone trusts me to interview them or take that story or be trusted to take that and create that content, like you're handing me over the keys. I just recently finished up a short documentary on racism in schools. It's called Schooling Narratives, and it was done by a postdoc a Penn State graduate student who's now at University of Texas at Arlington and is using that in her coursework. And, I try to do a passion project every year with my freelance work that, always makes me proud of something that I've done. I've done some productions with nonprofits. I've done some productions with other companies that have just done and told stories that just truly matter. And I think that it's important to make sure that people get the opportunity to share things. And I think that if we don't talk to each other, if we don't share with each other, if we don't have open arms and open ears, I think it's really hard to, the world is already hard enough as it is. There's a lot going on that if we aren't open to expanding our mindset, our world, then there's never going to be a difference, right? We're not going to have an opportunity to change. And I think that one of the ways that I'm gifted, right, to have this talent and this skill, to be able to share that with other people and to, allow opportunities for people to hear stories that they may not have ever been exposed to.
So you mentioned that you were involved with the AAAOs, both in DC and you're looking to get involved in Atlanta. I also know that you have a great appreciation for the history of the Black experience here at Penn State. Can you talk a little bit about how that is a motivator to stay involved as an alumna?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact that I obviously am a Black woman, right? So I can't deny that experience, but I also can't deny the experience of being a Penn Stater. Intersectionality is very real and very important. And I think that, although a lot of us share the Penn State experience, it's not always the same for all of us. And though, we talk about the history, right? The history books of People Know That We Are chant, probably have heard Wally Triplett. Maybe you've heard Mildred Button and Calvin Waller be mentioned. And again, you can think about, James Franklin, or we talked about, basketball and having Coach Shrewsbury, or even, if you watch the Blue Band, you know who Greg Drain is. But I think it's also important to recognize that, like, people who are involved in the AAAO, or even just students on campus, like, having the PRCC, the Paul Robeson Cultural Center, having Black Caucus and NAACP, SMART, which was something that was very vital into the reason why I even went to Penn State. I think it's so important to not only have these organizations, but support them and the students who are involved in them, simply because of the fact that, like, these are so important for the values and the development of Black Penn Staters. And, and I can think about, again, I mentioned Gary Abdullah, right? Dr. Stephanie Preston is another Black person who's at Penn State that's just making a difference in student lives. But also, I'm thinking of people who I graduated that are making a difference. For example, Summer Lee, who was in the Pennsylvania State House, but now is serving as a freshman representative for the House of Representatives in Congress. So it's just amazing to see that people who I was exposed to in my Penn State career are doing such amazing things in their lives, and, like, are kind of not only making Black history, but Black Penn State history. And again, especially for February being Black History Month, it's so beautiful to recognize that people who look like me, who have the same degree as me, who are doing such amazing things with their lives and their careers and their Penn State degrees.
This is the People of Penn State. I'm Paul Clifford. Today I'm joined by Shadé Olasimbo. She is the senior producer at HubSpot. So we like to have a little bit of fun at the end of each episode where we throw our guests some quick hitter questions. So first thing that comes to mind, you just throw it out there. Your favorite class at Penn State?
Ooh, favorite class. I don't remember the number, but it is international reporting. I had the opportunity to go to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, my senior year. That was with Tony Barbieri. And that was, I think, one of the first couple of years that they had it within the College of Communications. And it was just for journalism students. And now they've actually expanded to where there is a film one, there is a PR one, there is a journalism one. So 3 different sets of students, I believe, get the opportunity to go to abroad over spring break and create content and stories. And it's been amazing to see that, like, oh, wow, I'm not the only one who gets to do this, but multiple students are taking multiple international trips in their career at Penn State.
We talked about your passion is about telling other people's stories. So if you had the chance to tell one other person's story, who would it be and why?
I could go famous here. But I'm going to go with my grandmother. She passed away in 2019, and she's just such an inspiration to me. She's kind of the reason why I am the woman that I am today, and I would not be here without her. And so I would love for people to just kind of know the amazing woman that she was and the life that she lived.
How about your most unusual We Are moment? Like the unexpected place where someone yelled it out to you, or you were somewhere and you yelled it out to someone else?
Ooh, I don't know if it's unexpected per se. This actually recently happened to me. Okay. And it wasn't necessarily a we are. It was it's actually probably a dangerous moment now that I think about it. I was driving and my little 2010 Kia Forte. I have a Penn State sticker on the back, and then I have two on my little like side windows. I have my little like paw prints, and like someone was flashing their lights at me and like beeping at me. And I'm not even gonna lie, I have a hair of road rage, and I'm wondering, why is this person like beeping at me? And then they kind of pull away to the side to me and they're like waving at me. And I'm like, what? Did I do something to you? Is a light out? What? And they're like pointing at their vehicle. Then they pull in front of me and they have a Penn State thing on their car. And I'm like, yeah. So it wasn't a We Are chant, but it was mostly just like someone, I guess, who was really excited to see another Penn Stater in Atlanta. So like, that's what ended up happening. So I would kind of count that. It wasn't an actual We Are, but it was a very proud Penn Stater to see Penn State on my vehicle.
That's amazing. That's amazing. How about your favorite Penn State sport?
Oh, that's hard. As someone who worked with both men's and women's basketball and football at Penn State. Ooh, woof. That one's hard. I'm gonna have to go with football, but basketball's a very close second, both men's and women's. I've had memories in both the BJC as well as Beaver Stadium. So
now, last night was Valentine's Day. My wife and I went to the creamery and were able to get our favorite flavors of creamery ice cream. What is your favorite flavor of creamery ice cream?
Favorite creamery flavor? Am I allowed to have two?
You can, but you cannot mix
as long
them.
as I don't mix them.
You can't mix them.
Yes, exactly. My two are butter pecan. That's like my general fave, and the creamer has a solid butter pecan. But a true creamery solid is a WPSU coffee break. So
WPSU coffee break is my favorite.
I did not know that. Okay, nice. Yes.
My favorite. Unfortunately, my wife's favorite is the seasonal flavor. So it's in right now. She's a fan of cherry vanilla, so they call it the White House.
Oh,
yeah, White House
I've
flavor.
not had that one. How long is it in for? Because I will be back in March. So I may, if it's there, I may have to come and snag some.
Shadé, thank you so much for coming on the People of Penn State and allowing us to pass your story on to fellow Penn Staters. When alumni like you allow us to do this, it swells thy fame of dear old state. And for that, we're truly grateful.
Thank you for having me. We are
Penn State. I want to thank our producer, Vincent Longaro. I want to thank all of you for tuning in today. If you like this episode, I hope that you'll subscribe to the People of Penn State podcast in your favorite podcast app of choice. And while you're there, go ahead and give us a rating and drop us a review. Help us spread the word of these great stories that we are sharing right here on the People of Penn State about fellow Penn Staters. If you're a member of the Alumni Association, thank you so much for your support. And if you're not, what are you waiting for? Go to our website at alumni.psu.edu, and you too can become a member of the world's largest alumni association. Thank you for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are